benefit me and produce something like a primer on Forex trading, which is badly needed. And you might think that's not true. There's sites like BabyPips that teaches you how to trade the Forex. And I am basically, one of my missions is to tell people that is absolutely false. You can go through the entire BabyPips curriculum, and we will together. And I'm going to show you why you don't have nearly 20% of what's needed to be able to handle what's going to get thrown at you after reading BabyPips. And I'm going to go through some brokerage educational materials. Some of them are very slick, very highly produced. A lot of money and effort gets spent on brokers trading or training new traders to teach them how to trade in Forex and to give them the confidence to trade, and that's it. And I think that's their main function. It's not to actually allow you to know how to trade. It's to just give you the confidence to trade so that you'll put your money in and then they'll take your money. And I mean, they're not criminal in the sense that they mislead you exactly in how to, and a good method of trading, because often some of the people they hire to do these are legitimate traders and do have legitimate systems, but the main function is just to convince you that you've done the legwork, that you've taken your necessary precautions, and therefore you're okay to start trading. And I'm going to try to show you that that's not necessarily true. In fact, I may try to dissuade you from starting on the enterprise at all, because it's still debatable whether it's something that can be learned, frankly. So let's see. Let's move on. How do I get to the next one, boys? There's got to be a key here. I just click that. But we didn't. Did we go to that one? Can I go backwards? Yeah. We saw that slide, and then this one. I can use the keys. That's better. All right. Why is this important? Why am I doing this? One reason is that things are so imbalanced. Market power and influence is an all-time high, or it was until today. We'll talk about what's going on in the market right now. But corporations are bigger, more concentrated than any time in history. I think that one of the things that we need to balance things out is a more informed citizenry, more people who are more informed about money and how it works, because money has an undue influence on everything in our lives, and yet only a small select group of people are really privy to, what should I say, its secrets. And even then, economists do not have a firm grasp on what causes certain phenomena. So I think that generally speaking, all of economics needs to be treated in a more scientific manner. I think trading definitely needs to get a sort of Copernican model. When you think about how humans discovered how planets move around the sun, it was a process, right? We started off thinking that we're the center of the universe, and then we realized, okay, the planets go around the sun, but they go around in circles because circles are perfect shapes. And then now Kepler realizes it's actually they're ellipses. And then Newton tells us here are the laws that govern the ellipses and why they work the way they do, and deriving it with calculus. Physics is way ahead in terms of understanding the physical world. Economics is way behind in understanding the financial world. So the goal is to try to restore balance to the 1%, if we can even do that without horrible bloodshed and guillotines. I don't know. Who benefits from this? Well, I will, because it'll reinforce my learning by teaching using the Fineman Technique, which I'll talk about in a second. And it's a chance for me to order my thoughts, to try to be a little more procedural. I hope that you will get a benefit by getting a different take on retail trading. Definitely the way I trade is different from anything that you'll read on BabyPips or Forex Factory. That doesn't mean it's necessarily good or better. And I also think that trading systems are very personal. So this is the way, sort of the way I do it because it makes sense to me. But you probably have to find a way that makes sense to you. I hope to save people a lot of time by telling you about the things that I think just don't work at all, and that you can scientifically prove they don't work, that they're complete. I call them voodoo. There's so much voodoo in Forex education. It's ridiculous. I mean, part of it you think has to be malicious. Like it's out there to confuse people and to basically make it easier to take their money. But the other part of it is I think maybe people just believe a lot of nonsense because scientists are not the people who go into finance or into, and traders in general. I'll talk about who trades, but they're not always rational. I hope that society can benefit by just making people a little bit more knowledgeable where money goes and why it ends up where it ends up, and just how much influence it has on everything. Why share anything? I mean, I don't know. Like, it's possible that it's a mistake to give away any knowledge, but if you don't, then you're sort of in a situation where you're like an alchemist, laboring in secret with your secret notes, writing things with your left hand backwards so that anybody discovers your journals, they won't be able to tell what you've been writing about. And I just think knowledge should be shared and it should be free, even if exact details about how a living is earned might need to be sort of moderated or kept within a smaller group. But I don't have a problem with that right now. Nobody's even watching this, so why not charge for it? Why should we even trust you? Well, I can't charge for it, for one thing. Nobody cares. What do I gain? Well, I'll learn something and order my thoughts again. That was my thing. What's your angle? You should always wonder what someone's angle is. I mean, when Forex educators say, I will teach you how to trade for free, why? And what do they hope to get out of it? Brokers hope to bring in new business. BabyPips hopes to get clicks to their Amazon links and their affiliates, and their brokers, they get paid by brokers to bring in new business. Everybody has an angle, and you have to figure out what the angle is of the person or source of the information that you're getting. You need to think about what my angle is. All right, the Feynman technique. Well, Richard Feynman was a physicist and a genius, and he wasn't the originator of this technique, I don't think, but his name has popularized it. Basically, it's a technique that helps you learn by teaching others. And Feynman is famous for quickly being able to come to grasps with the basics of a new technology or a new science, and then doing a lecture about what it is in terms that are easily relatable to people, even to laymen. There's excellent videos about Richard Feynman talking about how computers work, even though he wasn't necessarily a computer guy. Like, he wasn't one of the early information technologists or one of the early developers of computers. I don't think he worked with Alan Turing or any of those people. But once he learned how computers work, he has an excellent video about what computers do. And he sort of uses this analogy of a very, very dumb filing clerk who's very, very fast. And he puts it into terms it's funny and entertaining, but also extremely accurate. And he was just really good at that. Very smart guy. So that's one reason I'm doing this, is I want to practice my Feynman technique and be able to tell people what I know. Oh yeah, trading is boring. It's stressful when it's not boring, and it's kind of feels sometimes like it's you against the whole world. So I'm hoping that by doing this, have a group of people that I can talk to about things, a sympathetic audience. But there are creative aspects to trading too. Inventing systems is fun and creative, but I think I take that too far. I've developed hundreds of systems. Most of them aren't worth even talking about, but some of them are pretty, I think, interesting, and I will share them with you once I've gone through the preparatory stuff. Okay, so it's not game and trade anymore. I just have to change the slide. Why gamer trade? Why not just trade? It is just trade now. But good trading is dull, and games are fun. And I think that when you're not trading, you should definitely not be like staring at the screen. Almost all traders are guilty of this, like watching price move. That's what a waste of life. I do think that we can learn lessons from games. I do think it's important and I probably will talk about a little bit of chess because that at least isn't going to take up any CPU cycles or encoder frames to be able to show a chessboard. Yeah, my encoder frames look good right now. We'll see how this video turns out. I hope that this is something that I can involve my kids in. I don't know. It's probably not going to work. They come home at lunchtime. I work from home. They come home at lunch. I thought it'd be fun for them to like do a little segment with me and we talk about stuff. But they want to talk about the games and I can't do it on this computer. So I'm going to have to separate those things. It's an excuse to play all the games I wasted money on in my youth. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe those games will remain unplayed. I have a huge Steam and Good Old Games collection, and maybe my kids will play them. I hope they don't. They honestly have a problem with playing video games way too much and like independently learning way too little. I do think it's cool to be on Twitch. I do think I admire streamers, and I think that it's a chance for me to talk, which I don't usually get to do during the day. So that's really important to me. I don't have a webcam right now, but if you think it's important that I have a webcam, I'll get one. I have a crappy one on this computer, but it seems to slow everything down, so I may have to do that separately. This is a chance to reach a segment of people who are good at trading but don't know it yet. Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't think that good trading is necessarily restricted to people who are good at academics or people who are good at numbers. Not necessarily. You don't necessarily have to be very mathematical. Although math, I don't think hurts, but it can blind you to some aspects. Some of the physical sort of trading is very physical. It's strangely physical, and people who are good at sports are often the best traders. But we'll talk about that more later. All right, is that my last slide for this one? Okay, so that's my slide deck for today. Great. So now I do this? Great. Okay. Now what happens? I click that. All right. So what's next? Let's look at the trade of the week. Trade of the week. Well, let's just talk about what's going on in the market in general. It's crashing. And it has been since people got scared by the coronavirus. The coronavirus is the reason that's always cited. But I suspect there may be a little more to it. I think the rise of Bernie Sanders didn't help. I think that, and to be honest, that's not a political. I'll talk about politics and I'll talk about my political leanings later. But I just want you to know politics has an effect on the markets, and those are just objective facts. The markets are afraid of Bernie Sanders. And so if Bernie is going to win the Democratic nomination, which he is now increasingly looking like he will not, but if he does, the markets would have a dim view of that, right or wrong. So there's that. There's this issue with the oil now, where the OPEC cartel has basically cut their nose off to spite their face in retaliation against the Russians refusing to also cut production. Where the Russians didn't want to do it because they're angry at the American shale gas producers for putting some kind of a levy or tax on their product. And so everybody's suffering as a result, which is interesting. But you can see that today was sort of a quick drop and then a sort of a slump. And I expect that pattern to continue for most of the week. But what I do not think this is necessarily a bear market. I don't even know if it's going to be a recession. I actually expect this to wrap up faster than most people think it's going to wrap up. But we'll see. It's definitely serious. And you can see that things are in a holding pattern right now. I don't know how far this is going to continue to fall, but it may be close to the bottom. And so for the trade of the week, I'm going to focus on something that's not based on US equities or indices. I'm going to look at the Australian dollar to the Japanese yen. Now, what's interesting is that this is pretty close to its historic low. You can see that it's pretty low, getting close to the lows that it experienced in 2001, 2008. And here we are 12 years later, getting down in the same range. And it's bounced up quite a bit since then. So the idea behind this trade of the week is that if we are near the low, historical low, that we should expect price to come up. And if not, it's going just to continue to slump along with the general market as people retreat to the safety of the yen and avoid commodity currencies like the Australian dollar. So I put a sell stop at about here, 66.7 roughly, and put my stop loss here at about 68.45. And the break-even point, or the point where we start trailing into once it passes this point here. These little spikes, I call them relative extremas or REs. Some people call them swing highs or swing lows. They're significant. They show you levels, and if price breaks past this relative extrema here, that's a very bullish sign. I would, in this trade, would hit its stop loss, and then we would go long, expecting price to get at least back up to here. So let's see. I have that all written out in a thingamabob. Let's see if I can get it to work. Trade of the week for 2020, March 9th. It is right now. Actually, I should modify this. Let me just fix that. Let's just say that. Okay. Let's do that. So short the Aussie yen if price goes below 66.72. If it goes above 64.48. Wait, does that mean make sense? I've mixed up my numbers. Yeah, short below 66.72, long above 68.4, 68.48. All right, so I have a pending entry set for 66.72 for now, with the break even at 64.09, break even plus 2 pips. A stop set at 68.48, and we'll trail once price gets below 64 aught something. Okay, those numbers make sense. That is the official call. It is March 9th. My local time is 10 to 2 p.m. And so we'll see how that turns out. We'll watch that. Now, I won't usually produce a trade that has both an up and a down target, but I think in this case it makes sense because things are slumping historically. It's at a low. It could definitely continue down a lot more than it is now. So a short trade makes sense, but I also think a long trade also makes sense. That's not always true, just in this case. And I think that the Aussie yen is interesting because of how much it's moved lately. And there could be a sharp reaction. You'll notice that today it's just sort of hovering in between these 2 points, this RE here and this RE down here. The market is waiting to see what's going to happen. All right, sorry, Epic Games, we can't use you today. We're not doing you. Exit and save some CPUs or CPU cycles. All right, so we are slowly but surely taking care of some business. I've done an introduction. I've done a trade of the week.